In earlier chapters, we took a look at our static or planning budget, and let's look at one for Larry's Lawn Service. Our static or planning budget was based on an original expected activity level, in this case 500 lawns, and we had some revenue and we had cost functions. In this case, we would expect to earn $75 a lawn. 75 times 500 gave us the 37,500. Wages, salaries, we've got a fixed component of 5,000 and a variable component of 30,000, so 5,000 plus 30 times 500 lawns. But in any event, we put together our static or planning budget. One of the deficiencies of our static or planning budget was it was difficult to compare our planned or static budget amounts with actual results. We have rather large variances. For instance, in this case, a $5,500 favorable revenue variance. And our revenue variance can really be a function of two things. One, a difference in the level of activity or volume. And two, a difference in the level of price that we receive for performing our service. And the same thing could be true with our expenses. In this particular case, we solve this problem by putting together instead what we call a flexible budget, which recasts our original budget based on our actual activity level. And in doing this, it enables us to isolate or break down that total $5,500 revenue variance, the total $3,500 wages and salaries variance, into two components. One related to the activity or level of volume, and the second related to prices. We call those spending or revenue variances. In the case of our lawn service, we had a revenue variance of $1,750, and that's the difference between our $4,300 actual and our $41,250 flexible budget. In terms of why did it happen? Well, originally we had planned $75 per lawn, but it turns out we were able to charge on average a higher price, and we can calculate that price by taking the 4,300 lawns, 43,000 actual revenues divided by 550 lawns. So we had a favorable revenue variance because our actual pricing was higher than our planned pricing. In terms of our activity variances, we have a favorable activity variance because our actual number of lawns ended up at 550, where we had planned 500 lawns. So we had an additional 50 lawns at our original plan price of $75 per lawn. In problem 14-24, we're going to investigate this $3,750 difference, this activity variance. And we're going to look at it in the context of a multi-product company, a glass company. And we're going to find our activity variance can be a result of a change in our sales mix or a change in the total level of or number of units that we expected to sell. The framework for evaluating this activity variance will be to compare our static budget amount, again that's our original budget, with our planned or flexible budget amount. Notice that the order of these has been switched from our earlier slide. So we're going to get static budget compared with our flexible budget. And we're going to do it as follows. For our static budget, it was based on a budgeted quantity or number of units, based on a budgeted sales mix, and budgeted on a contribution margin. Our flexible budget is going to be based on actual quantities, an actual sales mix, and a budgeted contribution margin. And if we compare the difference between our flexible budget and our center column, we see the only thing that differs is not the actual quantity, it appears in both. The budgeted contribution margin appears in both. The only thing that differs between these columns is going to be our actual sales mix versus our budgeted. So in comparing this center column with our flexible budget, we can calculate how much of our variance in revenues between our static and flexible budget was due to a change in the sales mix. And then we can also evaluate or isolate how much of it was due to a change in the actual quantity of total units sold. And we can see that that's the case because both the center column and the static budget both have budgeted sales mix and budgeted contribution margins. The only difference is actual quantities compared to budgeted quantities. So again, we're going to evaluate why there was a difference between our planning budget and our flexible budget. We're going to evaluate this $3,750 activity variance, and we plan to break it down into two components. Part of the difference in revenues can be due to a change in sales mix. Part of it can be due to a change in the overall total quantity of units that we sell.